My name is Janet Thompson. I'm 32 years old. The chandelier above the mahogany dining table glowed like a crown, scattering shards of golden light across polished silverware and crystal glasses. It was Christmas night, and as always, my family gathered here, same table, same rituals, same unspoken hierarchy. My father sat at the head, carving the turkey with the same solemn precision as if it were a ceremony. My mother, draped in pearls, smoothed her napkin compulsively as though she sensed the weight of the evening. Michael and David, my older brothers, sat across from each other, their wives by their sides already exchanging smug, knowing glances. Their children, Jake and Tommy, barely looked up from their phones, the glow of their screens reflecting in their youthful faces. I sat quietly in my place, dressed in a plain black sweater, content to watch to listen. The familiar aroma of rosemary turkey and buttery mashed potatoes drifted in the air, but beneath it pulsed something else, an electricity that made me tighten my grip on my fork. My phone vibrated once in my purse. I ignored it. Family dinners were sacred in the Thompson household. Whatever Emma needed could wait. Sarah. My father began, then caught himself. His mistake was subtle, but I noticed. He still sometimes slipped back to calling me by my mother's middle name. With a ceremonial flourish, he set down his carving knife, and silence fell like a curtain. There's something important we need to discuss as a family. The scraping of cutlery stopped. Michael adjusted his designer tie. His wife, Jennifer, leaned forward like she already knew the script, and Patricia, David's spouse, wore a smirk that made her lipstick look sharper. My father cleared his throat the way he always did before pronouncing something momentous. I've finalized my will with the estate attorney. After much thought, your mother and I have made decisions about the inheritance. The fire crackled from the living room, the only sound in the silence that followed. The businesses, the construction company, the restaurant chain, the investments will be divided between Michael and David. They've proven themselves capable of handling responsibility. The air tightened, every gaze flicking toward me. I cut another piece of turkey with careful composure. I understand. My mother leaned forward, her voice lilting in that tone she used when she thought she was softening a blow. Janet, honey, it's not that we don't love you. It's just, you've always been different. Your little computer job, living in that tiny apartment. You've never shown much interest in real business. Michael jumped in smoothly, eager to cement his role. Exactly. The construction company requires negotiation skills, contracts, development. Jennifer and I have been working alongside Dad for years. And the restaurant chain, David added, resting a possessive arm over Patricia's shoulder, demands hands-on management. Staff vendors' expansion strategies. It's not really your wheelhouse. Jennifer's smile was sharp with satisfaction. Patricia's smirk deepened. I sipped my wine, a 1998 Bordeaux, worth more than most people's rent. No one knew I'd quietly added it to their collection last month. Their palates weren't refined enough to notice, but mine was. You're right, I said evenly. I wouldn't know the first thing about running multiple businesses. Relief softened my father's expression. I'm glad you understand, sweetheart. This doesn't mean we don't value you. You'll have a trust fund enough to live comfortably. 50,000 perhaps. Jennifer glowed. It's really for the best, Janet. Michael and I have been planning expansions. We'll put the inheritance to good use. Patricia leaned in. We're thinking about buying those luxury condos overlooking the harbor. David says it's a gold mine. The turkey nearly caught in my throat. Harborview Residences, my development. The one I had financed, nurtured, and watched generate $30 million in profits last quarter. That does sound like a wonderful investment, I managed my tone steady. Jake and Tommy didn't notice. Michael reached for his wine. David smirked, and my mother touched her pearls again, visibly relieved. Around the table, they basked in a smug certainty that they were right about me. Small, quiet Janet, who had never been ambitious enough, never fit into their world. I speared another piece of turkey, chewed thoughtfully, and let the moment hang. My phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. But still I said nothing. Not yet. My phone buzzed again, inside my purse, persistent this time, but I let it vibrate against the chair leg. Emma never called twice unless it was urgent 3 times meant something monumental. A merger, perhaps. An acquisition. Billions shifting like tides. But here at this table, I was not the CEO. I was simply their youngest, the odd one out, the one with a computer job. Forks scraped. Glasses clinked. Conversation bubbled around the turkey and stuffing until Tommy's voice sliced through it like a crack in the ice. Aunt Janet, He was 19, still boyish despite the Harvard hoodie he wore like armor. He squinted at his phone, his forehead furrowed. "Yes, sweetheart," I asked, lightly spearing a carrot. "I just got a news alert. Forbes published the updated billionaire list." His voice carried mild interest, the way a kid might mention a new video game release. "That's nice, honey," Jennifer said, absently buttering her roll. But Tommy didn't look up. His eyes widened, darting from his screen to me and back again. His hand shook slightly. There's someone here with your name." The table stilled. Patricia smirked. "Janet Thompson." "Darling, it's a common name." "No," Tommy said, his voice thin but insistent. "It's her. It has her photo." My fork paused midway to my mouth. Michael chuckled uneasily, reaching for his glass. "Tommy, don't be ridiculous. Your aunt works with computers. She's not number 47. Tommy cut him off. His words tumbled, almost tripping over each other. Janet Thompson, 32 years old. CEO of Quantum Dynamics. Net worth, he swallowed. $3.8 billion. Silence. The kind of silence that thickens the air pressing against your chest until you can barely breathe. My mother's hand froze around her necklace. My father's face drained of color, his eyes narrowing as if refusing to process the words. David let out a short, nervous laugh. "That's absurd. It's clearly another Janet Thompson. Probably someone on the West Coast. A coincidence." But Tommy wasn't listening. His phone trembled as he lifted it higher. "It's her picture. It's Aunt Janet." Every head turned toward me. I set down my fork, dabbed at my lips with the linen napkin, and finally met their eyes. "Is it?" The fire popped loudly in the adjoining room as though mocking the stillness. Michael reached across the table, yanking the phone from Tommy's hands. Jennifer leaned in over his shoulder. Their mouths fell open in tandem. "Oh my God," Jennifer whispered. "It's definitely her." Patricia leaned over David, craning her neck. Jake abandoned his own phone curiosity, breaking through his teenage nonchalance. "Let me see that," David demanded, snatching the phone from Michael. His eyes scanned the screen frantically. "This can't be real." My father's voice was hoarse, impossible. You work for someone else." "You never asked," I said softly. The chandelier light glinted off the rim of my glass as I raised it again, calm against the storm building around me. My phone buzzed for a third time in my purse, rattling against the chair leg like a warning. And still I let it wait. Michael's hands shook as he scrolled through Tommy's phone. His designer tie hung crooked, now forgotten. Jennifer hovered so close, her perfume overpowered the scent of turkey and cloves. "There are dozens of articles," Michael muttered, disbelief fraying his voice. "Forbes, Fortune, the Wall Street Journal, every single one about you." Jennifer leaned closer, her manicured nail pointing at the screen. Quantum Dynamics, founded 8 years ago in a small apartment. Janet Thompson, 32 years old, from our city. David snatched the phone, his face flushed. Patricia peered over his shoulder, smirk, slipping into slack-jawed shock. "It says here," David read, voice tight, "that the company revolutionized artificial intelligence in healthcare, created diagnostic systems, acquired 3 pharmaceutical giants." He looked up, his expression crumbling. "Janet, this can't be real." "It sounds about right," I said, calmly cutting another piece of turkey. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the fire seemed to have stilled its crackle. Patricia's lips curled into a brittle laugh. "You're telling us, while we've been juggling vendors and expansion plans, you've been building a multi-billion-dollar empire." I dabbed my lips with the napkin. "Something like that." Jake spoke up suddenly, his voice softer, almost reverent. "Aunt Janet, it says you personally donated $50 million to children's hospitals last year, and you're building a new cancer research center, the Morrison Center." My mother's pearl necklace slipped against her chest as her hand fell. "But, you drive that old Honda. You live in that cramped little apartment." "I like my apartment," I answered. "It's where I built the company. And the Honda runs fine." Michael dropped the phone onto the table with a thud. His face had drained to the color of paper. "Sarah." He caught himself, corrected shakily. "Janet, there's an article here. Last month. Quantum Dynamics. It says you acquired..." His throat caught. "Thompson Industries." The table lurched as if struck. My mother's eyes widened. My father's hand clenched around his wineglass so tightly it nearly snapped. I lifted mine and swirled the Bordeaux, its legs streaking slowly down the glass. "Yes. Through my investment firm. You were having cash flow issues. Expansion required capital. I provided it." "You." My father's voice cracked the authority in it, collapsing. You've been our silent partner for 6 months. Silent investor, I corrected gently. I prefer to stay in the background. Jennifer's voice rose sharp and brittle. You let us sit here planning to buy Harborview residences, bragging about it at dinner. While you already owned it, Patricia finished her smirk dead and hollow now. Yes. I set my glass down softly, the sound echoing louder than it should have. Meridian Development Group. Another one of my companies. The chandelier's golden light suddenly felt harsh, glaring, exposing every crack in the facade my family had worn so proudly. Across the table, Jake stared at me with something new in his eyes, not pity, not dismissal. Respect. You lied to us. Jennifer spat, her voice shrill enough to cut through the heavy silence. You let us think you were barely getting by while you were what? Building empires behind our backs. I folded my napkin carefully, smoothing each crease before setting it beside my plate. I never lied. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. David jabbed a finger toward me. That's the same thing. You hid your true self, Janet. You deceived us. No, my voice was quiet, but it carried. I hid what I do not, who I am. Patricia scoffed, crossing her arms. That's semantics. I looked around the table at the faces of the people I had grown up loving, who now stared at me like I was a stranger. Am I suddenly not the same person who babysat your children when you needed help? The same one who stayed up all night quizzing David for his business degree finals, or taught Michael basic coding when he was thinking about switching careers. Michael's face tightened, shame flickering across his features. My mother's lip trembled. Janet, sweetheart, we had no idea. We thought... She trailed off, unable to finish. That I was weak, a disappointment. I supplied the words for her. Tears brimmed in her eyes. My father pushed back from the table, pacing with short, stiff strides. His commanding presence was gone, replaced with something smaller. Uncertain, shaken. This is too much. We can't just... Everything we've said tonight was based on what you believed, I interrupted gently, on the assumptions you made about me. And I let you make them. Jennifer slammed her palm on the table, rattling the silverware. Why? Why live like this? Why drive an old car? Hide in a dingy apartment, play the martyr. Were you testing us? I studied her for a long moment, because I wanted one place where I wasn't the CEO or the billionaire or the person everyone wanted something from. I wanted to walk into this house and just be your daughter, your sister, your aunt. The words landed like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. For once, Patricia had no clever retort. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair, glancing at me with wide, searching eyes. He looked like he wanted to speak, but fear of his parents held him still. Tommy, however, whispered under his breath, not realizing how loudly it carried. She just wanted to belong. My chest tightened at his quiet truth. David shook his head violently. No, this isn't fair. You can't turn this on us. You've been living a double life, Janet. You made us think you were struggling. I never once said I was struggling. I cut in. You assumed I was, because I didn't flaunt what I had. You saw what you wanted to see. The air grew heavier, each word settling over the table like dust. My father stopped pacing. His face was pale, his eyes lost. How do we come back from this? No one answered. In that fragile silence, Jake finally found his courage. He leaned forward, his voice small but steady. Aunt Janet, is it true you're building that cancer research center, the Morrison one? I met his gaze, softened my tone. Yes, it'll be finished in the spring. For the first time all evening, I saw admiration, not condescension, reflecting back at me. My father lowered himself back into his chair, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. The man who once ruled this table with unshakable authority now looked small, stripped of his armor. His eyes met mine, haunted, searching. Janet, he said, his voice breaking on my name, I owe you an apology. I set down my glass slowly. For what? For everything. For underestimating you. For dismissing your work. For assuming. I stopped him with a quiet shake of my head. You don't owe me anything. You made choices based on what you believed was true. I never corrected you. Michael's voice cracked across the table. But God, Janet, we told you didn't deserve anything. We explained why you weren't capable and you sat there and agreed with us. Because you were right, I said calmly. I couldn't run a construction company or a restaurant chain. That was never my world. I created my own. The words sank into them like stones dropped into water, rippling through their carefully built certainty. Jennifer stared at me, her face red with something between shame and fury. You let us look down on you. I didn't let you. You chose to. The chandelier flickered, as if in warning shadows dancing across their stricken faces. Across the table, Jake's voice broke the tension. Aunt Janet, can I ask you something? I turned to him, grateful for the shift. Of course. He cleared his throat nervously, glancing at his phone. This article says your diagnostic systems changed how hospitals detect diseases. I'm majoring in computer science. I've been reading about it. It's revolutionary. His eyes shone. Would you tell me more about it? The smallest genuine smile curved my lips. I'd love to. Tommy leaned in too, his earlier shock replaced by awe. And the Cancer Research Center. Can you tell us what it's for? I'm thinking about pre-med, and what you're doing sounds incredible. Their sincerity cracked something open in the air. For the first time that evening, the room felt less like a courtroom and more like a family table. My mother pressed her trembling fingers to her lips. My father stared at the nephews with something close to gratitude. I looked around slowly. Here's my proposition. We finish this dinner, we exchange gifts, and then we start over. Patricia frowned. Start over. Yes. I leaned forward, steady. You learn who I really am without the stories you've told yourselves. And I learn who you are when you're not busy managing the image of the successful siblings or the guiding parents. We start fresh as a family that knows the truth. The fire crackled again, filling the silence. Michael rubbed his temples, looking broken. David avoided my gaze, jaw tight. But my mother whispered through her tears, all the time in the world, sweetheart. We'll take all the time in the world. Dinner resumed, though no one seemed to taste the food anymore. The roast cooled, the mashed potatoes congealed at the edges of their bowls, but the atmosphere, shaken raw, was strangely lighter. My phone buzzed again. This time I reached into my purse. Emma's message glowed across the screen, European merger approved. Need signature before midnight. Pharmaceutical acquisition complete. $2.3 billion transfer confirmed. I typed back under the table. Send the documents to my apartment. I'll sign tonight. When I looked up, every eye was fixed on me. Work, my father asked, hesitant, almost afraid. Just closing a couple of acquisitions, I said, slipping the phone away. Nothing that can't wait until after dessert. Jennifer blinked. A couple of acquisitions. You say it like it's grocery shopping. Different scale, I replied with a small smile. Same principle. Tommy laughed softly, a nervous release. Jake leaned closer, almost bursting with questions. Aunt Janet, can you show me some of your work sometime? I mean, if you're okay with that. Of course, I said, warmth blooming in my chest. Michael rubbed his hands over his face, shame pulling at every line. Janet, we just told you you weren't worthy. We dismissed you. I heard you, I said gently. But I also meant what I said. The inheritance should still go to you and David. Those businesses are yours. You understand them. You've worked in them. They'll mean more in your hands than in mine. David's voice wavered. But you could buy and sell them 100 times over. Which is why I don't need them, I replied simply. You do. The inheritance belongs with the people who will value it most. My father's eyes glistened. His voice broke. Janet, after tonight, after everything we've said, how can you still? Because I'm proud, I interrupted softly. Proud to be your daughter. Proud of what you built, even if you never asked what I was building. You provided for this family. You gave me roots. The rest, I figured out on my own. The words broke something in him. His hand trembled as he raised his glass not in command, but in reverence. To Janet. The toast hung uncertainly in the air. Then one by one, glasses rose. Not to dismiss me, not to belittle me, but to honor me. For the first time I lifted mine too, meeting their eyes without flinching. To family, I said. The rest of the night, blurred questions, spilling from Jake and Tommy laughter. Cutting through tension, my parents listening more than they spoke. For once I was not invisible. For once they saw me. Hours later, I slipped into my old Honda, the night air sharp and cold. The city lights shimmered like jewels as I drove toward my modest downtown apartment. The world outside buzzed with billion-dollar deals, headlines, and responsibilities that would demand me again in the morning. But tonight I had something rarer, a family who finally knew me, and that I thought, as I parked beneath the familiar cracked street lamp, was worth more than any Forbes list could ever measure.